Building a software business is a long, hard process. And successful companies follow a maturity curve that they must overcome 3 hurdles for their long-term sustained growth. Jeff Curie, president of the Curie Point, will break down these 3 hurdles. That's why we've invited him on the show, and how the most effective leaders change the goals of the sales and marketing and product teams to navigate through each hurdle. Jeff is a CEO, experienced entrepreneur who has built multiple software companies in SoCal using both reoccurring SaaS and enterprise licensed models. Jeff, welcome to Critical Mass Radio Show and Podcast, my friend.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, let's get started simply. What is it that's unique about what you do from others who might claim to do something similar to you?
Well, there's not many people that do what I do, turns out.
Well, that makes it
well,
easier.
I mean, one of the big ones, of course, is I've been a CEO of a company. So
Yeah.
I help CEOs. I've stood in their shoes. I've made lots of mistakes. I've learned a lot of lessons. And, you know, I come and help companies from a different point of view from a marketing guy or a sales guy. I come and look at it from any point of view, titleless,
Right.
you know,
Well,
without bounds.
And you can look at it from the pure CEO's point of view, too.
Right.
Because you've been in that chair.
Yes. And a
People
lot of
don't
CEOs
understand unless you've been in that chair. You really can't appreciate what it's like to
No.
be the final decision maker of a company.
And it's a
right?
lonely place.
It is a lonely place.
You can't react. You can't bounce ideas off your people when it would scare them.
Right. Right.
So-
when you can't say, I don't really know what to do here. What do you think we should do? That can sometimes cause them a bit of concern.
Yes.
So what are the niches? Where do you, I said a little bit in the open, but where do you focus your practice now?
B2B software companies between usually, I mean, some are smaller, but usually 5 million in revenue up to 50 million in revenue.
Okay. Sounds like there's a lot of those.
There are a lot of those.
Do they want to grow, or why are they bringing you in? I know we talked about the 3 hurdles here, but what is it that's causing them some level of something to want to bring in Jeff?
You know, a lot of them are, it's interesting actually. A lot of the companies are companies that fell out of something, a consulting agreement, engagement that they built something and then turned it into a product, or they're a services company that built something and they want to turn it into a product.
Okay.
Or it was a spin out of another company. And anyway around it, they found themselves with a product that maybe they built part of it or somehow, and some customers, and they went and they started selling and all was good.
Right.
And then they flattened out. And they said, wow, we don't actually know what to do now that we ran out of the obvious market.
Okay.
What do we do? And they tend to not have really invested in what they would consider the soft skills, sales, marketing, product management, and things like that to lift the company to the next step. And so that's what I find a lot of companies kind of hit that plane. And the CEOs, you know, they're entrepreneurs, but they're just not happy with where they are. They
Right.
want to keep going.
Right. And they may have tried some different things and none of them are getting them past that plateau.
Yes.
And so you come in with your experience helping them to see what they can't see?
Very much.
Okay.
I consider it somewhat of an unfair advantage to come in from the outside
Right.
and look at, you know, what they've been inside for years and go, why are you doing it that way? You know, can you see this and you can't see that? And it's a lot of times it's like, you know, that just never occurred to us because they've always seen the world
Right.
through one lens.
Right. You can't see the forest for the trees.
Yeah.
They're working so hard in the business that they can't get up above it, right?
Exactly.
Plus, I would think with your experiences I read in the open, you've seen a number of different attempts and some have worked and some haven't worked.
Yes.
So you've got that set of experience that maybe they maybe grew up in the business. They don't know anything but the business they built. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. No, that's exactly true. Yeah. They've only really known one business as a CEO and they've never seen how different business models work and in practice what a really good sales team does versus a not very good sales team or really good marketing and not very good marketing. They don't have that perspective. So,
Right.
you know, I help give them that perspective and help them lay out a process to grow that.
So
for
I'm,
their
I'm
companies.
going off script here though, a little bit. Then that means you must be advising them on some level of organizational change.
Yeah, usually they have a dysfunction
Right.
of some kind.
Something's not
you know,
working.
Yeah. I mean, it's often because it's an incomplete executive team.
Okay.
They don't have all the skills.
Oh, okay. Okay.
You know, they got there without all the skills.
Right.
And then when they need all the skills, they don't really appreciate what those skills actually do.
Okay.
So they don't know how to hire the right marketing person. They don't know exactly how to go to market or expand their products or even figure out what they actually do. I mean, a lot of times
What do you mean by that?
Customers are, if you go talk to a company and you ask them, why do people buy your product? They often have because of this. But when you actually talk to their customers, they don't have the priorities right at all. The reason the customer buys it is a very different reason. And so they don't really understand it. They don't have someone who is the voice of the market in their company.
And so they're operating on somewhat
Kind of
wrong
momentum.
beliefs. Yeah.
Yeah,
right?
it's always worked and we continue to do it, but it's not getting us there. What do we do?
So again, I'm off script here, but I'm curious, Jeff. Can these leaders see this coming before they have to have the pain of it not working any longer? You know what I'm saying? Are there signs that if you could have gone back and go, let me spin you back 6 months or 6 years or whatever that is, and did this happen? I mean, are there kind of guideposts that maybe you would see if you would have been there?
Sometimes. Usually they're frustrated or they've turned over their sales team. They've turned over their VP of sales. They've turned over marketing, or their marketing is, they're like, oh, marketing isn't worth anything. They don't do anything. And it's like, that's a warning sign. Marketing's actually a really important function.
Yeah.
And if you think its job is to make brochures, you're wrong.
Okay.
You're not doing it right.
Right.
And so,
well, that's a part of
they
marketing.
just don't know.
That's a part of
It
marketing.
is a part of marketing.
But that's not strategic.
It's not the part that makes you sales.
Right. Or grows you.
Right.
Right. Okay. So let's keep moving through the questions, because we have definite questions that I want to ask him, as well as these ones we're going off script. That's what we do here on Critical Mass Radio Show and Podcast. Can you think about a time in your career where you might have failed? No, we're not talking about
I
other
can
people.
list a whole litany of them,
Okay,
actually.
we only got a 20-minute show.
Some of the best.
Okay, we only got a 20-minute show. At something that was important at the time, where you failed at something strategic in your career or in your company. And if you could give us context for that here and sort of set the stage for it, but then help us to understand what you learned from that experience.
Sure. So a good example of my failures is I was hired as the head of marketing for a company, a SaaS software company, and I wanted to help them grow. CEO hired me. Let's grow this thing. This is great. I didn't know. Usually, I didn't know a lot about the domain that they worked in, but I'm smart. I learn. I study. I read everything. So I'm trying to help them grow, and sales are really slow. And everybody's got ideas. Well, maybe we should make this feature. Maybe we should paint it blue. Maybe we should. Everybody's got an idea. But I'm like, but why isn't it growing? And I had the advantage of being kind of an outsider. I didn't know their market. So I stepped back and I said, well, let me understand this market. And so I started really looking at the market. And I said, well, okay, I figured out the problem. The problem is the market's only this big. So it's never going to grow very big.
Uh-oh. Ruh-roh.
Ruh-roh. And so I proposed, the company actually has a whole bunch of other assets. Why don't we try to build another product for a bigger market using some of the assets the company had? And the CEO was a bold guy, and he said, let's do it. And we did it. And the company is now 250 people, and it's thriving. Mm-hmm. And, the lesson learned is, you do have to step back and look at it from the outside in. Sometimes you're just aimed wrong. Mm-hmm. You're targeting the wrong thing. You got it. Yes, 20 people told you they'd buy it, and they did. And that's it.
That's it. You saturated the market.
That's it. You got the whole market.
Yeah, 100% market penetration, baby.
So, it was the advantage is you do have to step back, and you do have to really think about, why are you doing what you're doing? Is it really the right thing? Is the market big enough? Has the market moved since you started?
Yeah, because you're in a technology space with these software
Everything's
companies.
moving. Right?
Everything's moving. Nothing is... I have many technology companies on the show, and what I've noticed is, and I believe this over the 10 years of doing the radio show, is the half-life of the business model that underpins a technology company is a much shorter half-life than a lot of other business models. And if you're not constantly reiterating it and looking at it and updating it, you can get put out of business pretty quickly.
Absolutely true. And you can build software very quick too, but if you build the wrong thing, it doesn't help you.
Right. Right.
And so a lot of companies, take the best ideas of everybody in the company, but not actually talk to the market.
Right.
And what do you want to buy? What's your problem?
Mm-hmm. Well, your earlier example of believing why your customers do business with you, and then somebody else asks them and they tell them something different, that is an eye-opening experience, right?
It is.
You would like that not to be the case.
Yeah. But it's a great, once you go through the process, you go, oh, and they start explaining their company in a completely different way, and then
Right.
everybody starts nodding their heads and go, I have that problem too.
Right. Well, the ones that you work with that get it do, but I'm sure you've seen some companies that even when presented with the facts have a difficult time reframing their mindset.
For sure. It's up to the CEO.
Right?
The
Tone at the top.
CEO's got to be a fearless, eyes open entrepreneur.
Right.
If they're scared, if they're closed-minded, I'm sure you've had people on the show that said people are coachable or not coachable.
Uh-huh.
Some CEOs are, look, I'm here to succeed. I don't care if I'm right or wrong, and I'll take chances.
Right.
And other CEOs are like, I don't want to get fired. I got to report to the board. I don't want any bad news. I don't want to hear bad news.
Well, that's
And
a problem.
Let's
keep on. My third book is The Unintended Consequences. I titled it Killing Cats Leads to Rats. It's about mitigating the negative effects of unintended consequences. So I have a question here for you that says, can you think about a strategic decision that you made or maybe you helped somebody else make that the outcome was radically different than what you had anticipated it being?
Sure. My last company, fintech company in Irvine, it started as a formative AI technology, and the founders brought me in to figure out what was the market for this mousetrap. And so I started calling around Wall Street, and I talked to a whole bunch because I usually adopt technology earlier than other people. And everybody kind of had a different use case for it. Oh, this and that. So we said, oh, okay, it's a platform play. We'll build this platform, and everybody can do different things with it, and we'll sell this platform. And so we wanted to find a customer number one. And so we started working with this company. And this company, so they embraced the idea, and we started working on a very specific application of this technology. And the interesting part was we started saying, okay, so now that we're building this for you, and they were pretty happy, we're like, well, what is it you do? And we started going, what does this company do? And well, if they do this, then maybe their competitors would want it too.
Uh-oh.
And so we went and talked to their competitors, and they all said, if you make that work, we want to buy it. Oh. So we made this discovery, and so we pivoted the company away from being a enterprise piece of software that we were going to license to people to being a SaaS solution to that market.
Wow.
Complete pivot of the company. Completely changed the product from being a very complex piece of technology to a very simple solution using our very complex piece of technology.
Right, because that's all the people want, right? They want the solution.
Indeed, we could deploy in 48 hours. I mean, it was simple, and people love that.
Wow. That's a
instant gratification is what we said, right? That's what people want.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes it takes so long, especially in the well, you know better than I do in the software world. Sometimes it takes so long to get it implemented and running and seeing the value of it and the impact and blah, blah, blah.
Absolutely.
This is a positive unintended consequence. So on Critical Mass Radio Show and Podcast, we believe in peer learning. We think we can learn a lot from other people doing something similar. Where do you go to get outside ideas? You are that muse for many places, but where do you go to get that to stay?
So, a few things. I mean, I have what I consider my own personal set of advisors.
Good.
People that are much smarter than me, that don't do what I do, but they do something different.
Okay.
I usually find great ideas in other fields. How either people look at problems, or they do something, but it's kind of an analogy, but it's like, oh, well, that totally applies to this. And so I look to that. I have a big group of advisors that help me with that I spend time with, mostly drinking coffee and talking about ideas and problems. And I read voraciously. I read everything. I'm a very technical person, so I like to stay on top of technology.
Right. Podcasts?
Podcasts. More and more.
Podcasts.
More and more.
Right.
Absolutely. And I joined, a big networking group, Provisors.
I've heard of them.
I've met so many people that do so many things that I had no idea those were even careers.
Right.
And it's eye-opening.
Yeah.
It's just the number, and wow. And you talk, how did you get into that? And you're like, wow, I had no idea. So
yeah. I love that with this show and interviewing entrepreneurs about different businesses that they've built to solve problems that you would think, really, you can make money doing that, huh? That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a world of opportunities.
Right. Or entrepreneurs who have a passion about something. They made a great peanut brittle, and everybody kept telling them for years you should sell this, and next thing they finally start to do it, and now the world loves their peanut brittle
Yeah.
kind of a thing. So
Yep.
it's always great. I ask a guiding principle question. It's the idea, Jeff, is of all the things that you've learned, have you come up with an overarching philosophy that maybe you use to try to instill in the companies that you're coaching and working with? Sort of a culture kind of a question, trying to bring something to them that is lasting in their culture, and if so, what is that?
Well, I have two answers to that.
Okay.
One is my own guiding principle, how
Okay.
I run my business, and the other one is kind of what I like to impart on my customers.
Thank you.
Certainly what I like to impart on my customers is to put themselves in the customer's shoes and think like the customer. Be market driven. So many people have a problem with being market driven. I know I'm right. I invented this thing. The world, I will shove it down their throats if I have to, right? But I'm right. And they rarely are. It's almost always, if you look at the world, you get close enough to the customer, you realize what their real problem is and what they really want to buy. And if you can get people to start thinking that way, their likelihood of success is dramatically higher. Then they don't run down blind alleys. They spend their time in the field talking to customers instead of at headquarters in a meeting, huddling with other people who don't know.
Right.
But my own kind of North Star, so to speak, is I learned it actually from Octane, from Bill Carpu. One of the things that they do is, one of the metrics they use is how many people have they contributed to employment
Right.
in the area.
Right.
And I look at that with my customers. I want them to grow.
Oh,
and
wow.
my measure of their success isn't whether they're wealthy and they have big boats. It's how many families are they able to employ now? How many new jobs can they create? That's I think, my way of helping Orange County and Southern California grow, especially in the technology space.
Right. And I would think, tell me if it's true, those are good paying jobs. I mean, when Bill was on this radio show, that's part of what he talked about, is not just how many people, but the types of jobs are well paying, which then has this impact on the greater community because they need products and services. And
yeah, absolutely.
Right? So
yeah,
it's
I mean,
really
I live
positive.
in the technology world. It's a pretty highly paid world,
Right.
of engineers and developers and all the people, sales and marketing that goes around those people to make companies.
Yeah, the ecosystem that supports that.
Yeah.
All right. You're going to come back on the show, Jeff, in a couple years. Where are you going to be? What's different?
Well, I think what's different, I think my fundamentals will be the same. I'm still going to meet customers where they are and then help them grow from there. I'm hoping to find more customers that want help in some of the technical passion areas that I have. So I've been working in artificial intelligence for about 5 years, big data, about the same. I'm very interested in those areas and how companies can apply AI, which I thought, there would be more companies that actually are looking to do that, but in reality, there aren't. It's very new, and a lot of companies, especially at the CEO level, they're not thinking about AI. They're thinking about much more fundamental things. How am I going to pay for my employees this month, kind of things.
Right.
But that technology has so much benefit to the operational capability of a company or its competitive posture, and so I really want to work more in that space, and that in general. And then also the Internet of Things space, I think, is an area that has just transformative power. I mean, it'll go through a lot of false starts and a lot of really,
Right.
well, that was a bad idea. Great. Now we have 1 million devices all listening to us and recording it and sending it to someone in Cupertino. Nice. But
Yeah, as an example.
as an example, but
Hypothetically.
the idea is transformative. If you can use a telephone and a remote sensor to check someone's health in Africa,
Right.
fantastic. We've disaggregated the fact that you go to a doctor because they're within 5 miles of you. Well, why be within 5 miles? So these new capabilities in power open up all kinds of doors.
Do you think that the adoption of AI, machine learning, and other smart technologies is going to hit an inflection point, though, where if the people didn't start now or aren't investigating it, by the time it kind of gets into the zeitgeist, you may be playing catch up at a very fast rate?
I do.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So a word to the wise, and you don't have to just be a software company necessarily, right?
No, so many companies now are looking to how do we apply AI to take our product to the next level? Because if we don't, our competitor will.
Right.
And so people that are number 4 and they want to be number 1 could jump to number 1 with a very innovative AI-based version of a product.
Right. Or does this make sense to you? The classic 2 people in a garage who aren't even in your industry yet, but knowing how to use smart, intelligent products like tools like AI, machine learning, can disrupt your industry with a whole other level of efficiency because now they have help.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So I think that almost makes the risk even greater for these companies to look outside their business, to look for where the competition may be coming from, because you can't just look at the top 10 people in your space.
It could be very disruptive, right? Completely different ways of solving problems that, wow, we built all this code to do this.
Yeah.
So a human could do it, and now your machine just spits it out.
Right.
How'd you do that?
Son of a gun.
Well, I did it with an open source, open
right.
source code I got from Google and a
Right.
bunch of data.
Right, yeah. It was really easy. Yeah, right.
It's not easy, but
No, it's not easy.
it's getting easier every day.
Right. But it's something we should be looking at, especially, I think, companies in your main niches who are all around it already, right?
Yeah. And everybody says the words,
Right.
I don't, what website can you go to that doesn't say, oh, we use AI? But they don't. They want to be Me Too's, but it's like, well, okay, for what?
Right.
What does it do?
And if you're going to get an investor, in your deck, you want to put those terms.
Yeah, I think the
AI.
investors have wised up to
Do you?
that. Oh, yeah.
So they know the questions to ask that
Oh, yeah.
can expose you pretty quickly?
Yes.
So
Yes.
don't do that unless you're really doing it. It's not going to serve you well.
No. Everybody, they can evaluate it very quickly. Yeah.
All right. So if someone would like to learn more about you and what you do, how do they find you online?
I have a website, thecuriepoint.com, 1R, Curie, like Marie Curie, or LinkedIn, Jeff Curie on LinkedIn. There's not many Curies on LinkedIn.
Okay.
There's a couple in Orange County. I'm related to all of them. So any of them you reach, they can
6
find
degrees
me.
of
But
separation, baby.
if their name's Jeff, it's me.
Most likely, yes. Well, that's great. Thanks for being a friend of the program, coming in, sharing a little
Welcome.
bit about the business. I've enjoyed our time together. It's kind of flown by here on Critical Mass Radio Show and Podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, you're welcome. Let's thank the engineer, because I'm supposed to on the script. His name is Paul Roberts, and he actually deserves it. But really, the heroes of the show are our 3 producers, Joan Park, Crystal Nunley, our newest producer, who is here in the studio today off camera, Nicole Terry. If you'd like to connect with me, please do that on LinkedIn. I'm Richard Franzi, Franzi. And until our next show, I hope all of your business decisions will move your company in a positive direction.